Welcome back to my channel, everyone. I am Rachel from Evelyn and Peter, and today I have this cute crochet bag to share with you guys. I am so excited for this one. I know I say that every single time, but I really am for this one. Maybe it's because I collabed with my friend Megan, so there is a knit version of this bag available, but this is the crochet version. I just love it so much. You can find the free pattern on my blog, EvelynAndPeter.com. I will link to that in the description. And then it's also available as a line brand kit, obviously. So the kit comes with all the yarn you need to make your bag, plus a free copy of the printable PDF pattern. You can also change out your yarn colors if you don't like the two colors that I used. You can swap them out. They have so many different pretty colors available. And then I will, of course, let you guys know if it is on sale. Usually they have really good sales, like 30 or 35% off. So I will let you know about those sales. Make sure you are subscribed to my newsletter on my blog. Just go pop in your email. I don't spam or give your email away. I just let you guys know whenever I have a new tutorial, pattern, or sale happening. So make sure you do that. And then this bag is also available in my Etsy and in my Ravelry shop. If you want your bag to have a sturdy bottom and be able to have pockets and everything on the inside to keep all your stuff organized, then you need to check out this insert. So this is the little insert that is on the inside of my bag. It has a bunch of pockets and a zippered top, so I will link to that for you. You definitely don't need it. This bag is still cute and functional without it, but if you wanted something easy to just pop in and keep your stuff organized, then I recommend grabbing this, especially if you don't know how to sew and you don't know how to add a lining in, then this is great to have. And speaking of sewing, this video is sponsored by Craftsy. Craftsy is your online resource for all things creative, and I know we are yarn lovers over here, and there is so many classes for crochet and knitting. There are so many instructional videos where the very talented teachers will walk you through step by step everything you need to know about whatever project or DIY or recipe that you are making. You can even connect with fellow makers and DIYers to ask questions, share ideas, and just stay inspired. Plus, my girls have been really into stuffies and cute little animals, so I know that I have to check out the amigurumi class that they have for woodland animals. I am so excited for that. Speaking of animals, Craftsy already has over 2,000 classes available, and one of the best parts about being a member is they are constantly adding more and more classes, so you always have something to create or make. And because you guys are just the best ever, the first 1,000 of you to click the link in the description is going to get a full premium membership for only $1.49 to Craftsy. Thank you guys so much for checking out this tutorial. Now let's get started. For this project, you're going to need worsted weight yarn. I'm using Lion Brand's 24/7 cotton. I highly recommend this yarn. For this project, you'll want a strong, sturdy cotton yarn to make this bag. I'm going to be using the color taupe and ecru. They have lots of pretty colors available, and all the exact yardage is written out on my blog within the free pattern, so go check that out. You'll need a 3.5mm hook, scissors, a needle, and then a measuring tape as well. So we're going to begin on one of the main panels of the bag. You'll be making two panels exactly the same. So start off with color A, which is the ecru color, and then just make a slip knot. And now we're going to be working the starting chain. So you're just going to go ahead and yarn over and pull through your hook a total of 72 times for 72 chains. For row 1, you're going to be working a single crochet into the second chain from the hook. I like to work mine in the back bump, but you can do it however you prefer. So just insert your hook into that back bump, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. And you're going to do this all the way down the length of your starting chain for a total of 71 single crochet stitches. When you get to the end of the row, you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. This chain does not count as a stitch throughout any part of this pattern, so the chain 1 does not count as a stitch. So for our very first stitch of this row, you're going to just work a single crochet into the very first stitch from the row below. So insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2. So we're just going to work 1 single crochet stitch into each of the remaining stitches across the row. Your stitch count is going to stay the same at 71 single crochet, and your stitch count will also stay the same throughout the remainder of this panel. When you get to the end of the row here, you're going to be working your last single crochet stitch, but instead of doing your final yarn over and pull through the 2 loops, you're going to drop your yarn, and then we're going to pick up color B and switch to this yarn color for row 3. So just go ahead and place the yarn on your hook and then do your last pull through with your new color yarn. And then you can give a little tug to the 2 tails just to make sure it's nice and secure. And now our working yarn is color B, so chain 1 with color B. And before we move on, I want to show you what to do with the tails of yarn that we have so that we can minimize our ends that we need to weave in at the end of this panel. So go ahead and cut your yarn and then take those 2 tails and just tie them in a knot at the end of the row. Don't pull too tightly and mess up your stitches, but just give a double knot. That way we can work over the tails of the yarn and have less ends to weave in. So if you don't do this, you'll have double the amount of yarn to weave in here. So what I ended up doing was just taking 1 strand of yarn and crocheting only over one of them. I tried doing it with both ends, but to me it made the stitches look a little bit too bulky. So I ended up just taking one of the tails and then working my stitches directly over it. So in that very first stitch, you're going to be working a single crochet, and you can see how I just worked my stitch directly over the tail. So I'm just going to bring it along with me as I go to hide it underneath my stitches. Again, you can see it's laying on top of the hook, and then I'm just working a single crochet stitch into the stitch from the row below. So you can just do this until you've covered up a couple inches of the tail, and then you can just drop it and leave it and trim off the excess yarn that you have from crocheting over it. So you can see once I've worked several stitches, I'm just going to stop carrying that yarn with me and keep crocheting, and then you can just trim off the extra yarn here from that tail. So make sure whenever you switch colors that you tie it in a knot and carry at least one of the strands with you as you go. Okay, once you get to the end of the row, you can go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. And now for this row, we're going to be working some slip stitches. So in that very first stitch, insert your hook and then yarn over, pull through and pull through the loop on your hook for 1 slip stitch. And now in these following stitches, you're going to be putting your hook in the back loop only. The back loop is the loop that is furthest away from you. Then just yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook as well. So you're going to do 1 regular slip stitch and then back loop only slip stitches across the row here. Just keep your tension even as you go. You don't need to pull down or tug on your slip stitches at all. You don't want them to be too tight because you want to be able to work your hook in there easily within the next row as well. So just go ahead and slip stitch down the row. When you get to the end of the row and you have 1 stitch remaining, you're just going to finish with a regular slip stitch under both the front and the back loop to finish off the row. Now you're going to chain 1 and turn your work. And this row we're going to be doing some more slip stitching, but this time we're going to be working through the front loop only instead of the back loop. But in your very first stitch here, you're going to put it under the front and the back loop, just like we did in the previous row. When you're looking at these stitches, it might get a little confusing at first if you're not familiar with front and back loop. Instead of looking at your work right side like this, tilt it so that you're looking from above and you can see the V shape that the top of your stitch creates. That's how you know which one is the front and which one is the back. It will be looped together in this little V that you see here. The one closest to you is your front loop, and the one furthest away from you is your back loop. So tilt your work so you can see the top, and then in the loop that's closest to you, insert your hook through that loop only and just work a slip stitch. Go ahead and work your way across the row, doing front loop only. Again, don't pull your stitches too tightly. You just want to easily insert your hook and then pull it through, just gliding your stitches. Don't tug them down or keep your tension too tight. It's important to just keep a relaxed tension here. When you get to the end of the row and you have one stitch remaining, just go ahead and finish with a regular slip stitch, working through both the front and the back loop. And now we're going to be switching back to color A and work another single crochet row. So you can drop color B, pick up color A and just place it on your hook, and then just pull it through the loop that is on your hook. And then go ahead and just chain one. And now we're going to be tying those two tails together into a knot. So after you get your chain one in, just go ahead and take those ends and do a double knot. Go ahead and turn your work, and now we're going to be working single crochet stitches across the row here. I'm going to take one of the tails and crochet over it so that we have one less tail to weave in later. So I'm just going to take one of the tails and then work my stitches over. You can see that since I'm on the right side of the work now, I'm tucking my tail to the back of the work. And then again, an easy way to find the top of the stitch is tilt your work forward so that you have a bird's eye view of it. And when you find the V at the top, that is the top of the stitch. So work your hook through the front and the back loop of the stitch from the row below. And just work your single crochet stitches, making sure that you carry that yarn along with you and you're just single crocheting over it as you go. So now we're just going to continue repeating what I have already shown in this video. So basically we have rows 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 here. And we're just repeating rows 2 through 5 over and over and over again throughout the pattern. So row 2 was a single crochet row with color A, which is what you see here. And then rows 3, 4, and 5, you're working a single crochet row, a slip stitch in the back loop only row, and then a slip stitch in the front loop only row with color B. So you're just going to keep following along with the same repeat, rows 2 through 5, switching colors just like we have, like I've shown you in this video, switching out the colors as you go, tying them in a knot at the end and crocheting over at least one of those ends, and just continue repeating the same process over and over and over again until you have the correct amount of rows that the panel calls for. So you will have a total of 109 rows in the panel. So you're just repeating rows 2 through 5 until you have 109 rows. You will be ending on a row 5 repeat. And then you'll notice in this next clip coming up that I have 110 rows and that I have ended on a row 2 repeat, and you will be doing that as well, but we're going to be doing it slightly different because I have another tip on how to hide in some of the ends of our surface slip stitches. So you will be adding row 110, but just hold off on that and we will add it after the surface slip stitches are made. So don't get confused if you see that I am ending on a row, on a color A row, because we will be adding that in for you after the surface slip stitches. It is written that way in my free written pattern on my blog. So as long as you're following along with that, you should be good. And then we will add that last row later on. So go ahead and work up rows up through row 109. Okay, this is something like what your panel should look like when you are done. Again, I have row 110 already made here, and if you went ahead and did row 110, that's fine. You're just going to have to pull it back out if you want to do the little tail weaving hack that I have for you, but you still will have some tails left over from making this panel, so there actually didn't take me that long to get rid of. I'm just going to snip off these the extra ends of the tails that we crocheted over, and if you did crochet over both of the ends, then you shouldn't have any ends really to weave in, and you can just cut them all off. But if you only crocheted over one of them like I did, you're going to have to weave it through just like the taupe color in. So you can just use your needle and just pull it through, and because these are double knotted and I felt like it was secure enough, I didn't weave my ends back and forth. I just weaved it through one time and popped it out a few stitches down, just like my taupe color. So you can just go ahead and do that all the way down, and if you do it like that, it shouldn't take you too long to just stick it through some of the stitches like I am here, pull it through, make sure it's not peeking through on the other side, and then just cut off that extra tail. And then you'll want to do this step before going to the next step of the surface slip stitches. Okay, so once you have all of your ends woven in, you're going to grab color A and then go ahead and create a slip knot. And instead of pulling your knot tightly down to your hook like you normally would before you start crocheting, you're just going to leave a loose little slip knot like this one here. It doesn't have to be too big, but you'll just want to make sure it is loose, and then you can just go ahead and remove it from your hook. And with your panel right side facing up, you're going to locate the third stitch from the end of the row and just count over. So we have our first stitch here. I'm going to zoom in a little so you guys can see better. You have your first stitch of row 2, and then second stitch of row 2, and then in that third stitch is where we're going to be placing our hook. So we're at row 2 here, and in the third stitch is where you're just going to be inserting your hook from front to back and just stick it through. And then you're going to take that slip knot that you created and just go ahead and place it on your hook. And then you're going to hold on to that working yarn and then just pull that loop through from the back of your work to the front of your work. You'll want to make sure that you don't pull the knot through. You want that to stay on the back of your work. So if you made your knot not big enough, you can loosen it up a little bit more, but you want it to kind of be the height of this first brown section here. So you want your loop to be as tall as the brown section, and then in the stitch just straight up above, so you're still in the third stitch, you're keeping a straight row. You're going to insert your hook just above the color B section and then yarn over and then pull that loop through your work plus through the loop on your hook as well. So that was our first surface slip stitch. And you can see that it's not tugging too tightly here. It's the height of rows 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to do the same thing. Make sure you're in the stitch just above it. Now you're working your hook through kind of in between that third and the fourth stitch. So instead of going into the stitch, you're kind of going to go in between those 2 stitches of your single crochet row. And you're just going to insert your hook. So you can see mine's just to the right of the stitch, and then yarn over and pull through the loop on your hook. So we have one big loop, surface loop, and then we have a smaller one. So it's going to alternate a bigger loop when it's on top of the taupe rows and a smaller loop when it's above the color A row. Now pull your yarn to the height of that next brown stripe. Make sure you're going through the right stitch, so it's just always in the same third stitch directly above, and then pull through, and then again in the same stitch right there in the color A row, insert your hook, yarn over, and pull through. So you can see how it's alternating sizes, and then you'll have to pull up your yarn slightly so that it can pull all the way up for this section. And your surface slip stitch row, your line should stay straight. You're not going to be switching stitches at all. You're always going to be working it through the same one all the way up the row. So it's really, really easy once you get the hang of it, especially since you're going to be putting your hook into the same spots essentially throughout this entire portion of doing the surface slip stitches. The most important part is to just make sure that you give enough slack whenever you're working over the brown stripe. So make sure you just pull that loop up to height and then work your slip stitch. You're going to go all the way to the top of your work. Again, I have the last row 110 here. If you don't, like I pointed out earlier, and you haven't worked it yet, then you can just work directly over the last brown stripe section and just yarn over and pull through the loop and then just fasten off your work. And then we will be crocheting over the ends later. So don't stress out if you don't have your white row here. We're going to be adding it in here in just a little bit. If you did, for some reason, already make your row 110, you can stick your hook through and just pull your tail to the other side just to get it out of the way if you want. But again, do not worry, we will be adding in that last row. So just finish off like you normally would at the top and fasten off, leaving a tail a few inches long so that we can tie it into a knot later. Now we have to do this across the remainder of the panel. So you're going to be leaving 2 unworked stitches in between each row of surface slip stitches. So you can see our next empty single crochet and then the one following it. And then in the third one is where you're going to put your hook. So you're skipping 2 spaces in between each row of surface slip stitches. So you'll have 2 skipped on the end and then a surface slip stitch row and then skip 2 and then a surface slip stitch row all the way across to the other side. You should have a total of 23 surface slip stitch rows when you're done with your panel, and then it'll look something like this. Now we have more ends, the dreaded ends that we need to take care of, but this doesn't take too long, I promise. So we're just going to take the tails at the bottom of our work here, and the 2 that are closest to each other just tie into a knot. Make sure you're not pulling too tightly and messing with the front of the work and messing the stitches up. So just do a secure knot. I think I knotted mine like 3 or 4 times each and then tugged tightly, and then you're just going to trim the ends of the tail at the bottom here. So if the knot is going to bother you, then you can always weave in these ends if you would like, but I found that it stayed nice and secure. Nothing's going to come undone if you tie it tightly, and the knots hidden are going to be on the inside of the bottom of your bag. So you will have 1 extra strand of yarn on the end here. Just take it and pair it with the previous 2. At the end of the row, you'll have 3 strands that are connected together. But you're just going to do this all the way across the row and just make sure you get those into a knot. And then we're kind of going to be doing the same thing up here at the top, except I'm going to pull out my row 110 and show you how to crochet over those ends after we knot them. So at the top here, just do the same thing. Take the 2 tails that are closest to each other and tie it in a knot. I just tied a regular double knot up here at the top because we're going to crochet over it, and we're going to crochet over some of the ends as well, kind of weaving them in. Make sure you just don't pull too tightly or it can mess with the front of these stitches. So just look like this, and then we are going to do it all the way across, and then I will show you how to work over those knots. So I just pulled out my row 110 here just so I can give you a visual. It's just the single crochet row. So if you haven't done it yet with color A, you're just going to single crochet across. And then you can see when I get to the knot and the loop that it created, I'm going to put it over my hook while I'm working those single crochet stitches. So again, I'm inserting my hook, and the loop that I made is on top of my hook, and the knot is as well, and then just work your single crochet stitch like normal. So it's just as if you were working over the tails of yarn, except now you have a knot that you're crocheting over as well. After you work the tail, work a few stitches over each of the tails, you can just drop it and place the following tails on top as well, because you want to make sure you get every single one of them crocheted over, and then just place each new knot on your hook as you go. So it's really simple to do, and this will keep it so that the top of our bag has a nice clean edge. Even though it's on the inside, we still want it to look nice. So just work your row over it and it will hide it as you go. Okay, so then your piece will look something like this, and you can just cut the extra tails of yarn off and get rid of them. And then you need to go back and do the same thing all over again for a second time. So the second front the second bag panel is exactly the same. It's just a repeat of what we just did. So you're going to go back and you're going to rework the same thing so that we have the front and the back of the bag, and then I will show you how to join everything together and make the strap. Okay, so once both panels are made, we're going to sew them together. I'm just going to use color A. You want to place your two panels together, right sides facing, and then you'll just want to make sure it's even and lined up. So as you're sewing this piece together, you can just, as you go, make sure the brown stripes are lined up with the brown, and then the white stripes are lined up together as well. And you can use whichever sewing method you prefer. I know everybody has their favorites and their preferences, so you can just do whichever way you normally like to sew your pieces together. And we're just going to be working down the side of the panel, across the bottom, and then back up the other side. So I ended up using my needle and sewing the side, and then once I got down to the bottom corner, I used my hook and I slip stitched across because we had those single crochet stitches at the bottom and it was really easy to work through, and I thought it just gave it more of a sturdy feel. And then I just used my needle and sewed up the other side as well. So go ahead and do that, and then we will be making and adding the strap. So for the strap, go ahead and use color B. Leave a long tail for sewing to your bag later, and go ahead and chain a total of 8. So yarn over and pull through 8 times. Okay, so now we will be working single crochet stitches back down. So in the back loop only of the chain, I'm just going to insert my hook and then work a single crochet stitch into each of these chains for a total of 7 single crochet. When you get to the end of the row, go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. Now we're going to be working through the back loop only of the stitch on the current row, as well as the back loop of the chain that we just made previously. So the first few rows of working your strap might be a little bit confusing, but it's really easy to do once you've worked up a handful of rows. So again, I put my stitch or I put my hook through the back loop of my single crochet, and then I'm going to stick it through the back unworked bump of the chain that we just made. So I'm inserting it through both, and then I'm going to work a single crochet stitch through those 2 loops. So just yarn over, pull through, and then yarn over, pull through both loops. Again, in the next stitch, I'm working my hook through the back loop only, and then line it up with the chain below it and stick your hook through that chain as well, and then yarn over and pull through both of those loops, yarn over, pull through both loops on your hook. And you're just going to do this across the row for a total of 7 single crochets still, so your stitch count is going to stay the same. Again, the first maybe 3 or 4 rows can be a little bit harder to do, but don't give up on it. Keep going, because once you get past this initial tiny little piece that you have here, it goes really, really quickly. So as long as you have made a total of 7 single crochet and you're not losing any stitches anywhere, you should be good to go. When you get to the end of the row, it can be kind of your last stitch can be a little curved and tight, so you might have to dig for it a little bit, and don't forget to do your final stitch before ending that row and turning. So again, you should have a total of 7. And then you can just go ahead and chain 1 and turn your work. With each row that you add on, it gets easier and easier to see. So in the back loop only of that very first stitch, I'm putting my hook in, and then I'm lining it up with the back loop of the stitch from the row below as well. So you can see this has more of a defined line. I'm going to insert my hook and then work a single crochet. Again, in the back loop only, plus through the loop from the row below. It's just going to look like a bar going straight across. So it's easier to identify once you get going. And you're just going to repeat this for a bunch more rows. So this row that I'm doing here is our repeat row. So you just chain 1 and then work a single crochet through the back loop plus the back loop from the row below, work a single crochet like normal for a total of 7 single crochet stitches, and then chain 1 and turn your work. So I'm just going to show you a few more stitches here just to show you that it does continue to get easier. You can see that back bump from the row below is more defined now. So I'm inserting my hook into the back loop of the current row, plus that back loop from the row below, yarn over, pull through both of those loops, and then yarn over, pull through 2 loops on your hook. So just continue repeating this across the row for a total of 7 single crochet stitches, and you're going to have to make a bunch of rows for the length of this strap. You're going to need your strap to be approximately 57 inches long. So I do not have the exact row count for this, but you'll want to take your measuring tape and then just work your strap until it's 57 inches. If you want a shorter bag or a longer bag, you can easily adjust it. Just make sure to take into account your yardage will change. And this is a pretty sturdy strap. It has a tiny bit of stretch to it. So take that into account as you're making it as well. And when you put things in your bag, it might stretch like an inch or so. It's very, very sturdy, so I didn't notice too much. But you don't want to make your strap too long, or it will be just hanging weird and too long on your body. So 57 inches is what I did mine, but you can easily adjust and add or remove rows if you want to. So once your strap reaches about 57 inches, we're going to do the final row here. So insert your hook under both the front and the back loop of the current row, plus the back loop of the stitch from the row below, and work a single crochet. So it's exactly the same, except we're going under the front and the back loop of the current, and then the back loop of the previous row. just work your single crochet stitches across, and then you can fasten off and leave a tail with some length to it so that you can sew your strap to your bag. Okay, so now we're going to be adding our strap to our bag. This is what your bag should look like currently. It's right side facing out, and I'm going to kind of sandwich the bag into the opposite way so that my side seam is laying flat in front of me. So you can fold your piece so that it's kind of triangular shape at the bottom, and your side seam is going straight up and down along the side. And we're going to be folding and tacking up the bottom corner and adding our strap in to the outside. You have a couple of options here. You can either sew your strap down underneath the little triangle fold that we're going to make in the bottom corner, or you can do it on top. I did mine on top because I just found it easier and liked the way that it looked better, but either way, whichever you prefer, you can do. And the way I found easiest to figure out how much to fold at the bottom is by counting the brown stripes. So it ended up being about a couple of inches that you need to fold. But you can see the corner of my bag here, I folded the corner up so that it was level with that 5th brown stripe. So that's the easiest way to kind of mark off where to sew it together. If your strap is going underneath, you can place it underneath before you start. Or if you're placing it on top like I did, you can just take your strap and lay it over the corner of the bottom of the bag about an inch or so, and then you're going to have to sew through all of these layers to attach it. So you can pin your corner in place if you want to make it easier, and I just use the tail of my yarn from my strap to do all of the sewing. So you want to just either hold it really carefully all in place and use those surface slip stitches and the different lines as a guide so that you can make sure it's matched on both sides. So I just sewed back and forth several times through the corner flap of the bottom of the bag and the edge of the strap with my tail. And then once I did that, I started pulling it all the way through the bag panel as well. So once you start that portion, you'll want to make sure that you're not sticking your needle all the way through to the other side. So you'll have to open up your bag, and I found it easier to stick one of my hands inside the bag as I was going and to just make sure that nothing was snagging on the opposite side of the bag that shouldn't have been. So just be careful and be aware of that as you go. And then it's really easy to use the single crochet stitches from the bag to stick your needle through and work, and it came out really nice and clean, and you can't even see the seaming that I did. And then the surface slip stitch rows that are right next to the seam on either side is what I used as my guide for sewing. So I placed my stitches right next to those surface slip stitches that are hiding under the strap and worked my way all the way up to the top on this side. So you'll want to go all the way to the top of the bag, and then you're going to do the same thing on the other side of this strap as well, working your way all the way up to the top. I do recommend seaming along here on the last row just to make it extra secure. So I did that along this side, and then I worked my way back down the other side of the strap to the bottom where I first joined in. And then once you get this side of the bag sewn with the strap, we're going to be doing the same thing on the other side as well as far as the fold goes. So you want to make sure when you fold up the corner that you're folding it exactly the same as the first side. Then make sure your strap isn't twisted. And then we're going to do the same thing. I started at the bottom again and worked my way up, except instead of sewing all the way to the top on this side, you want to measure out 6 inches and leave that unsewn. So 6 inches from the top of the bag down. You're not going to sew the strap there. You're just going to leave it unworked. So make sure you are aware of that. It's just going to be left like this so that it can create the little fold over flap of our bag. So 6 inches is what you want to leave unworked on one side of your bag. So again, be very careful when you're doing the opposite side here that it matches your first side. You'll want to use the stripes as a guide. I folded mine up to the 5th section of color B, so you can count out those rows and then just make sure you fold your triangle up to the 5th section. And then take your strap and place it on about 1 inch or so, either on top or underneath your little triangle fold. So you can match it out and use the surface slip stitch rows too as a guide as well. They should curve the exact same way. When I pick mine up and sandwich them together, you can see they are perfectly mirrored. So just make sure that you are watching that as you go. So that your bag will be nice and even on the bottom. And once you have your strap sewn on, then all we have left to do is create the little loop for our button and sew on the button as well. So the side where our strap isn't all the way sewn on will be the side that we flop over, and this is the corner that we'll be putting the loop on and the toggle button. So for our little loop, I'm just going to use color A, and I'm going to chain a total of 17, and then we're just going to slip stitch back down that chain length to create the loop for our button. So in the second chain from the hook, just insert your hook and then yarn over and pull through, just slip stitching. So you're just going to slip stitch back down for a total of 16 slip stitches, and then we will add it on to the corner of the flap of our bag. And just fasten off and leave a little tail for sewing. So now you're just going to take the little loop that you created, and I just threaded it through a couple of stitches right next to the seam on the side of my bag, the side that we have the flap on, and just pull it through, and then take one of the ends and sew it together to form a loop. And then you can just knot it and weave in those ends from the loop and cut off the extra yarn. If you need to adjust the size of your loop, you can just chain as many or as little as you need to, depending on the size of your button. So really easy to adjust. And then I'm just going to fasten it here. And now we just have to add in the button to the front of our bag. So now you just need to decide which way your bag is going to face. I am going to wear my crossbody so that it rests on my right hip. So I am folding the flap down on the right hand side, and then I'm just going to sew my toggle in using my needle and my yarn. So you can just go ahead and do that. What you'll want to do is kind of just lay your bag flat and then fold it over, and right around the area that the loop naturally lays is where you will want to add your toggle. You don't want to do it too far down because then your bag, the flap will not be able to reach it. So I kind of just placed it right where it naturally fell, and then I sewed my toggle on at an angle. And that is it for this design. Don't forget to check out the bag insert if you're wanting the bottom of your bag to be sturdy and have pockets in it. This is the perfect little insert that I got on Amazon, so I will link that in the description for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.